It's amazing to me how many people who are serious weightlifters really misunderstand protein absorption and make like massive mistakes for how they're taking it that really impede their gains. So I had a young patient recently who was a vegetarian, so it was difficult for them to get the protein and they were trying to maintain muscle mass. As you probably know, one of the biggest indicators of longevity is maintaining and having good muscle mass for your height and weight and age, right? So he came in and he was struggling to kind of put on muscle mass and just generally like felt like he was doing everything he should, but couldn't figure out what was going wrong. And every patient, I always get them to do a food diary, have a look at it closely to understand what's going on. And from initial glance, it looked like he was doing well. Again, vegetarian, but the thing was that he was doing intermittent fasting as well. However, what you don't realize just how much protein there is in halloumi, things like tofu and yogurt. There's actually a lot more than you think. So he was getting the protein in. He was about 80 kilos, so he needed 160 grams a day and was doing that. He was actually hitting those goals, which I was quite impressed with, really. But he didn't seem to be getting the gains, and I couldn't quite understand what was going on. So I was like, so what's going on with the timings? Like, when are you having this? What happened was that he was actually taking them not all at the same time, but he was taking a lot of his morning dose of protein together with his protein powder, then his big hit in the evening with maybe yogurt for dessert, and was getting all of it together. And what I told him was, and what a lot of people don't realize, is that yes, you need 30 to 50 grams of protein per sitting, and that is really important. Too little, then you don't really stimulate protein synthesis. It's a little bit below 30, but we say 30 to be on the safe side. Beyond 50, basically your body can't process it anymore. So what he was doing is doing these like massive 80-gram hits twice a day because of the intermittent fasting. So hitting the goals, but not hitting the absorption window. Because when we say, well, that 30 to 50 grams, well, the next logical question is, well, in what window? And the answer is 3 hours. So basically that 30 to 50 grams takes about 3 hours to get absorbed. And that's why if people are not doing it in that way, not kind of coming every 3 hours to get their protein hit, if you will, that's why they're not getting the mTOR. It's a cellular pathway that stimulates muscle growth. They're not getting that stimulation, and therefore they're probably not getting quite the gains that they wanted. And really, if he's doing that sort of the way that he's doing it, if he's only getting really a maximum of 50 twice a day, 100 grams of protein is still good, but it's not optimal, and that's probably why he wasn't getting the gains that he was looking to. So that is a really important thing to bear in mind. Now, the next question is, well, how did he do it? What did we say to him? Because he still wanted to do intermittent fasting, and intermittent fasting has gone in and out of favor. The benefits, of course, are the autophagy, so it kills those kind of cells that are potentially going to be harmful in the future. It also improves your metabolic health, so how you use glucose, your insulin levels, all that sort of stuff. But the criticism was that people aren't getting the muscle stimulation. People are losing muscle. But the thing people worry about with intermittent fasting is they think that you're going to lose muscle in that fasting period. But you have to be quite prolonged in your fast for it to actually start breaking down muscle. It breaks down carbohydrate, or your liver glycogen is what it's called, but basically sugar. Then it goes to fat. Then it takes a long time before it goes to muscle breakdown. However, also we've realized that if you do there are other ways that you can stimulate that cellular pathway, that mTOR, and that is not just eating protein, it's also obviously lifting weights. That's a stimulant as well. And if we do that alongside, it really negates any problems that are caused by intermittent fasting. Not only that, is that you almost need, because we go into what you call catabolism, which is like a breakdown, we need that to happen for us to then go back into the rebuilding phase. So it's actually a good thing, and not as much of a worry as we thought when it comes to losing muscle mass during intermittent fasting. And really, as long as in the refeeding phase, when we're coming back, we're getting enough protein, then we're getting all the benefits from the fasting without the fears of what we're losing from a protein synthesis, muscle mass maintaining, all of that point of view. Now, the thing to bear in mind is that when we are doing intermittent fasting, the only problem is that window, you have that 3-hour absorption window for protein, right? So even if you're doing a 8-hour feeding window, that isn't enough time for you to have enough. You need 4 windows basically of, especially if you're trying to get 160 grams and the maximum you can absorb in one go is 50. You need to have 4 windows, right? Because you can't, the math doesn't work otherwise. So what we needed to do with this patient, and you can do this if you're doing an intermittent fasting diet, which is we can do one protein shake outside of the feeding window, and it doesn't kind of negate all of the benefits of intermittent fasting all that much. So it kind of gets the best of both worlds without hurting either one too much. So all we did was adjusted. We got him to do a protein shake in the morning before his fasting window opened. Then during that 8-hour fasting window, we'd get him to eat the 30 to 50 grams of protein at the start of the window, in the middle of the window, and at the end of the window. And then all of a sudden, we started seeing lots of gain because we were getting the absorption that we needed. Now, the way that I recommend patients do this is to plan your, like, it sounds really, you can tell I've been doing longevity too long when you're seeing protein as doses, but I tell them to plan it in those kind of 4 stages. And really the way that I recommend patients do it is that they have a kind of window, they have it in blocks, and 2 of the blocks need to be fixed. And the fixed blocks are your protein shake and what I usually say is breakfast. So kind of 4 to 5 eggs will give you that near enough 30 grams of protein. So that means that you've got 2 guaranteed hits of protein. And if you do a 50-gram protein shake and a 30-gram egg meal, that means that you've got your 80 covered straight away before you've thought about anything else. And then what I get them to do is like think of almost like cards in the deck that they can play that hit those other 2 protein goals throughout the day. So that basically the other 2 meals you can take care of. Could be something like Mindful Chef, for example. They're really good for not thinking about it and giving you the protein that you need. But there are lots of ways that we can figure out those other 2. But as long as we've got the first 2 bases in place, that means that we are covered for at least half of the requirement. But the thing people really need to think about is the quality of the protein powder that they're taking, because I would say 99% of the ones out there are crap. They are full of ultra-processed ingredients, thickeners, sweeteners, gums, all of that stuff. A lot of them have a lot of sugar if they're flavored and they're trying to make them taste really nice. Just be careful of the sugar content. A lot of them don't have enough leucine. Leucine is probably the most important amino acid when it comes to, the amino acid is the building block of protein. It's the most important one when it comes to muscle synthesis. And just making sure that it's a good whole protein source as well is just really important. Now, actually, so this patient, once we did all of that, had a really good improvement in their muscle protein synthesis. They got gains really quickly. They were doing all the work. They had everything dialed in. They just weren't doing it. It just shows it's how you do it, not what you do sometimes, that makes a difference. So his muscle mass increased massively in the next couple of months after that. Now, one of the protein powders that I recommended was one of those clean sources, and actually ended up making a list of all the recommended protein powders. So if you go to the Health Mapping Clinic website, I'll link to it in the description. There is a list of what I think are really good quality protein powders that are free of all those criteria that I made before, but also they are not affiliate linked to me. I don't get any money for recommending them. It's just purely ones that I've researched, tried, think they're good myself, and I would recommend to you. So I'd recommend that you check that out. Otherwise, there's a video here which is a bit of a more formal explanation of protein absorption, how we should think about it and how we should go about it. But yeah, I hope you find that useful. Go and download that free guide. It's really useful. All right, thanks. Bye.